everybody, it's me, Julie of Casa Chic, and today we are talking about everyone's favorite topic right now, eBay's promoted listings. If you haven't heard, eBay's changing their promoted listings program starting in January. To put it bluntly, and I'm a trial lawyer, so you know I'm blunt, people are in the reselling community aren't happy about this change. But realistically, the changes are coming. Sorry. Um, whether we like them or not. So I thought this would be the perfect time to break down what promoted listings are, what these upcoming changes mean for our businesses. And I reached out to eBay and invited them to join me for my monthly sourcing school interview. And they sent not one, but two employees to help answer the community's biggest questions. And just to be completely clear, eBay is not paying me for this interview. This is not an advertisement for eBay. I just wanted to help educate you so you can make informed decisions that are right for your business. And I wanted to educate myself so I can make decisions that are right for my business. So we have today Kye and Rishi. Welcome, Kye and Rishi. Why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us about what you do for eBay?
Sure. Thanks, Julie, for having us. For everyone, hello, this is Rishi Vora. I work on product management side within eBay advertising. So we'll be talking about promoted listings and all bunch of various topics around it.
Hi, everyone, and I'm Kai. I'm on the product marketing team for ads, and I work very closely with Rishi.
Great. Thanks so much for you guys taking time out of your day. I'm sure you're really busy to talk to us. So let's get started at the very beginning. Because there is more than one type of promoted listings, and for many sellers, they kind of all sound alike, but they're actually very different. Can you just give us a basic understanding of what the different types of promoted listings are and how they differ from each other? And I think Rishi wants to
Yeah.
take that question.
Sure. I think it's a good idea to before we dive into the questions and deeper aspects around it. It's good to zoom out, take a look at what the basics are, what the fundamental pillars are, and that'll help audience build the story, connect the dots, and all that. So essentially, we have three pillars in eBay advertising. They're all designed to help you drive more traffic to your store or ads or listings, compete within your category, and then it significantly boost your sales at the end. That's the primary goal of all of us. On a high level, these three pillars are promoted listings. One, it has two strategies, like you mentioned, Julie. On one side, we have general strategy, which is a low risk foundation. The other side is priority strategy, which is our advanced targeting engine. Then comes promoted offsite. This helps you extend your reach beyond eBay with a very ease of use capability. And then finally, the third pillar is promoted stores. This helps bring spotlight to your whole brand, your whole store. So let's take a look at each of them in a little bit more detail and get an understanding of what they really provide. So starting with promoted listings, the general strategy, as everyone, most of the sellers, as you mentioned, have been using from your audience. So that's our foundational strategy that has existed for quite a while. It's a cost per acquisition, CPA, or in simple words, cost per sale model, where you only pay if your item sells after a click on your ad within 30 days of that. And of course, with a bunch of other conditions to help keep things ideal for our sellers. It helps boost visibility across eBay, and in some cases even beyond eBay, like Google. But within eBay, if you primarily look at, that is your search results. When you go to the view item page, you'll see the ads below that when you keep scrolling in different modules. Many other places like checkout cart and so on. All of this visibility is without paying anything unless it eventually converts or gets sold. The other side, priority strategy. That's built mainly for our sellers who, in addition to visibility, want more control, more advanced settings. So essentially, it's a cost per click model where you pay only when someone clicks on your ad. Doesn't matter if it sells beyond that. You don't pay for that sale. It includes advanced features like keyword targeting, bid management, and through our upcoming update, exclusive access to the first slot or slot one of search. Moving to the promoted offsite, like I said, it helps you expand your reach beyond eBay, primarily on Google Shopping. Yes, promoted listings general does that the same purpose, but with promoted offsite, you don't even have to choose your listings. It takes mostly your entire inventory, helps promote extensively outside eBay. We take care of all the optimization automatically, and keeping things simple. Is also a cost per click model similar to the priority strategy. And lastly, promoted stores. Like I said, it helps you expand uh, and get more highlight on your stores. It helps you build the brand, the trust, and the engagement you want from your buyers to every single thing that you have on your inventory, rather than picking and choosing the listings. So it depends on which strategy, what's your goal, and these are the three different pillars that you can utilize. So yeah, so now that we know what they provide, fine. To just wrap it up, one may ask, when do I use that? So generally, we recommend using the general strategy of promoted listings for competitive products in a very high competition space or category, for high visibility with low risk. Priority strategy also for the competitive items, but more ideal for multi-quantity listings or fast-moving items, and something where you have higher margin. So it gives you room to play around, because on one side, general strategy is cost per sale, the other side it's cost per click. So you can weigh out how things work, and move on from there, what works for you, what doesn't. Offsite and stores, they are pretty straightforward from their the naming. So yeah, that was a pretty high level overview. Happy to dive into your questions.
Okay, I have one question. Can you promote your listings and promote offsite, or do you just pick one of those four things?
You can do all of them at
Okay.
the same time if you want.
Okay.
So yeah, we can share more on when do you use which one, and how they
Okay.
work together.
Okay. Um, and so you said that the items that do well are like multi-quantity and competitive items. What do you mean by competitive items?
Competitive items, think of it as, say, for example, I'm selling running shoes. Now, that's a very high competition market, compared to something very unique for a specific, industry or factory that I'm selling. Yeah, it's only me and a few others that are selling it. But for things like running shoes, I would definitely want to stand out of the crowd, get more visibility, get more sales, and traction. And even if I don't get sale, at least it, brings my name up there, builds trust over time, and gets them intrigued of whenever they see me next.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so can you, Kai, I think Kai, you wanted to answer this question. Can you share a few examples of small sellers who have successfully used promoted sales? Because most of my audience is small businesses. Most of us work by ourselves or with a partner. We're not big companies. We're not big organizations. I work by myself. I have forever. So we have to watch our budgets very carefully. But are there small sellers who successfully use promoted listings to grow their sales?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would consider myself one of those sellers, right? So from my own selling experience, and I specialize in collectible trading cards. So think Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, One Piece, etc. And so out of my 300-ish listings, I promote approximately like 90, I would say 90% of those listings. And with those listings, I have a strategy that ranges from 2.2% all the way up to 6, sometimes 8% ad rate, depending on the item and sort of how quickly I want to sell them or how much margin, to your point, I have on those. So when I buy a card for X amount, how much can I reasonably make off of that if after fees and after ad fees, what does that look like? And so by promoting my listings, I have seen and I've done an A/B test where I'll list one and then I'll list a similar item, one promoted, one non-promoted. And I have seen an increase in velocity for the ones that I do promote, meaning I see those sell faster and more often than not, right? And then I guess the next logical question would be, well, you say, like I said, 2.2%, 6%, 8%. And we recognize that sellers, both large and small, see the suggested ad rate, right? Julie, you're probably familiar with that. And suggested ad rate can range anywhere from, 8% up to 14%. And so as we think about, well, why Kye, you're an eBay seller and you work at eBay, why are you using the suggested ad rate? And to your exact point, which is as sort of an investor seller, right? Somebody who cares deeply about maximizing margins and maximizing my sales, I have to pay very close attention to essentially what is taken off the top, right? So after shipping, after packaging materials, after ad fees, what does it look like for what I purchased a card for, and ultimately how much can I sell the card for, right? But for a lot of sellers, that's not their use case, right? That's not their experience. So even our smaller sellers who are just looking to declutter a basement or an attic or their room, and they're like, hey, this is interesting. Why don't I take a picture and see how much it's worth on eBay? These sellers, right, they don't really care necessarily about how much it sells for. They just want to get it out of the house, right? They just want to find a buyer who's interested and sell it. We actually see a lot of those types of sellers as well, which is if you want to just sell quickly and you want to find the best balance between selling fast and making that sale and balancing it with the cost of promotion, right? Suggested ad rate works perfectly. And not only that, but it also takes the guesswork out of, do I set it at 2? Do I set it at 4? Do I set it at 8? The suggested ad rate allows a seller to very quickly say, okay, if I want to sell fast and I don't really want to, let's say, do the calculations, I can just set it at what eBay recommends and know that I'm going to maximize my visibility while minimizing my cost, right?
Okay, so that gives me two questions. So my first question is, what are the things that you don't promote? Like what type of things do you not promote? Because you're the promoted listings guy.
So this kind of goes to what Rishi was also talking about, which is around competition, right? So there are particular, and this is for me specifically within my selling category of collectibles and trading cards, there are particular cards where there are hundreds, if not thousands, of sellers with the exact same card in the exact same condition, right? So those are the ones that I'm most likely to promote, right? And so I sort of pay attention to there's social proofing now within eBay where you can actually see how many sellers are promoting a listing within a particular category. And that helps you kind of gauge when to promote and how aggressively to promote in terms of how high you set your ad rate at. And then there are listings or collectibles that I have that are more vintage, right? So these are the earlier Pokemon cards, the cards that not as many collectors have, that where if you do a search, there might be a dozen, maybe 2 dozen sellers with the exact same copy of the card. Those ones I tend not to promote because I know that it only takes about a scroll or two to see all of the listings. And so there isn't as big of a jump in terms of visibility for me to promote those cards. But again, those are more edge cases. So 90% are promoted, but 10% are not, primarily because when I do a search and I do my research, I can see very quickly, okay, there's only 6 people with this card listed right now. So if I am a buyer looking for that card, I'm likely going to run into Kye's listing for that card, right?
That makes sense. I listed some really expensive leather jackets today for a consignment client. And my consignment clients, I don't always like to promote those listings because my margins are much smaller on my items that I sell for other people versus the stuff I thrift. My thrifted items have much larger margins. And these jackets are like amazing, and there's no other ones like them listed. And I'm like, I don't think I need to promote them. The people that are going to be looking for this, there's none on eBay. So if they're looking for it, mine's going to show up first anyway. But then again,
Yeah.
somebody gave me some Nike SB sneakers that there's probably 200 of them listed, I'm going to have to promote those because they're going to be way at the bottom, I'm sure.
That's right.
So,
And suggested ad rate is sort of is trying to find that optimal balance, that best balance between, okay, um, what percentage of your final sales are you willing to sort of spend on promotion? And we'll try to get you higher up in search results, more visibility within the recs, recommendations for view item pages, etc. Potentially show your Nike SBs offsite, right? Depending on how much you're willing to spend on
right,
ads, and it'll find that optimal balance to say, okay, show this to everyone, you know,
right.
everywhere, right? Because I just want to sell it, and I'm willing to take additional 10% and allocate it to ads to get to sort of clear it off the shelf, if you will.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so Rishi, how does eBay decide when and where to show a promoted listing to a buyer? Does it show up twice in search? I guess is
Um,
like one of my questions. And how does eBay decide, like, if I'm searching, how does eBay say, well, we're going to show a promoted listing right now?
yeah, so eBay uses a bunch of signals or say mix of factors like firstly listing quality, your buyer relevance, listing relevance, like I said, competition, and what we were just discussing about is your ad rate, or if it's a priority or CPC, other CPC products, then bid rate, and many other factors to decide on that moment instantaneously in that instant where somebody is searching for something or scrolling somewhere in eBay, in that moment, which sellers, which ad shows up to which buyer and where, right? All of these decisions are taken at runtime with our deep algorithms, all these intelligent signals, and we come up with that decision at that moment. Now, let's look at these factors in a little bit more detail, right? So, keyword relevance, what does that mean? Um, we get to know the signals, what the buyer is looking for, and which are the listings that are really closely matching up to those search queries, right? So that's the keyword relevance, definitely plays a big role. Performance history. If you are a seller who has sold X, Y, and Z, you've received certain engagements, even if not sold, you got clicks and impressions. That definitely tells our systems what the buyers are looking for, and you tend a high potential to perform well. Um, of course, if you are a new seller, the performance history doesn't exist, but then that gives you a little benefit of doubt to keep the playing field even for experienced and the new sellers. Then the bid rate or the ad rate, the amount that you are willing to pay influences our algorithm as well, where and hence the competitiveness that we just mentioned about, right? So the higher you bid or higher you have the ad rate, you'll have higher chances to show up. Listing quality, so relevance and performance also kind of slightly ties into this listing quality where the title matters, the quality of images that you are having in your item matters, description, the item attributes, and various other things that you have on your view item page for the listing. Lastly, but not the least, obviously, we have many signals, but lastly, to call out the buyer intent and behavior. So we have recently incorporated, as the world is shifting with AI, so we've empowered our systems with AI models that learn more about what the buyers do, with which sellers or items they've interacted, and it kind of builds a pattern, or you may say knowledge, to intelligently maneuver how and when to show what to whom. So many questions, but it's all being done within a fraction of a second. So yeah, to summarize, yeah, these are the different factors. And to your question about does it appear twice? Yes, it may sometimes, because on one side you have an ad click. We have obviously seen instances where some people don't even click on ad, they just go organically. So that helps the seller anyway because of your ad. Overall performance and visibility has increased. So yes, it can appear, but most likely it'll be one or the other at that given moment.
Okay, so first of all, what does CPC mean?
Cost per click.
Okay,
So
cost per click. Okay. Um, so if I am promoting, or let's say I'm not promoting. Okay, let's say I am promoting. I'm promoting at a high rate, at the eBay recommended rate, but my listing is crappy. There's one photo, it's blurry. I don't have a good title. I just put Nike shoes and I got one photo of the Nike shoes. And even if I'm promoting at a high rate, that doesn't mean people are going to see my listing. Is that what you're saying? So a combination, if I'm hearing you, a combination of maybe promoting and having a good listing with good photos, good keywords, all of that.
It's all the
Good,
same.
just
Yes.
okay.
So not just that you're willing to pay, not just that you're a great seller who has good trust, but then you end up with, like you said, a crappy listing. It may not win all these different benchmarks that we've set up for our
Okay.
algorithm, right? So you got to have a good holistic performance, relevance, advertising, your listing quality, and of course the buyer intent to get all these matching up and showing up there.
So
And
eBay
I
is,
would
oh, go
add to
ahead.
that, yeah, and I would add to that, right? As you think about your listing quality improving, right? So to Rishi's point, more quality imagery, you're filling out your attributes for your items, good description, using keywords within your title, right? And you're pricing competitively. You can, as an advertiser, if you're looking to use promoted listings, you may not actually have to promote as aggressively because you have a high quality listing. So this is one of the benefits and sort of the synergies of having a great listing and then not needing to actually be as competitive or bidding or setting as aggressive ad rates to compete because your listing is actually doing more of the heavy lifting versus just generating visibility because you've decided to set an ad rate of, let's say, 15% or a maximum CPC that is head and shoulders above your competitors. So that's something important to keep in mind as sellers sort of think about, okay, ads is the silver bullet. My listing isn't selling. I just increased my ad rate. Well, they actually play together really well. And that's the thing. We want sellers to think holistically about their listing, not just from a organic versus ads paid perspective.
That makes sense. Okay. eBay's announced that promoted listings general is changing in January. So, this is like the $1 million question. What are the biggest changes that any seller who hasn't been paying attention or doesn't understand should know about?
Sure. The biggest change, right, I'll get into the change in a second, but the biggest thing to know is that this combination of change that we're bringing gets US and Canada in line with how promoted listings already work across rest of the sites or globally. So first, let's break it down. On the general strategy, promoted listings general, the change is basically on the attribution logic, the model, simplifying it from the two-faced model that we have today, direct attribution and halo item attribution. I can dive into those in detail, but I'm assuming everyone is aware of those for now. But with the update, you don't have to worry about which type of attribution model am I going to get, direct or halo. It's a very simplified, one simple definition, which is if I have an item promoted with general strategy, and if someone clicks on that ad and it gets purchased, yes, buyer agnostic, gets purchased within the next 30 days, there will be an ad fee. The condition is it has to be promoted at the time of click. Obviously, that's how a click becomes an ad click. And it has to be promoted at the time of the sale. So if you don't have an item promoted when any sale happens, of course, there is no ad fee or attribution in that case. So basically, no promotion, no ad fee. Um, so that's the change on the general strategy. And quick point to highlight, it's all focused on one single item. With this change, there is no way or no confusion for a seller to look into, did buyer click on this item and then purchase the other item? There's no more of item agnostic behavior. It's all focused on one single item. Just simply rules being promoted at time of click, promoted at time of sale, and that has to happen within 30 days. And if these match, it's a attribution. Secondly, on the priority side, the change that is happening is it is getting exclusive access to the first slot of eBay search results. There are misconceptions we've been hearing. So it's not top slots, like not the whole row of slots. The general campaign still has access to the slots 2, 3, and 4 on the top row, but priority strategy gets the exclusive access to the number one slot, the first on the top left. So to wrap up on this change, the global standardization that we're bringing with US and Canada matching up to the rest of the sites, it's bringing the promoted listings reporting, attribution, performance kind of more consistent, especially if you're a US or Canadian seller selling internationally, you'll now have the same experience regardless of where you are and where you sell. You'll have the same experience for how general ads are charged and how priority ads show up in your search results.
Okay, so right now, if you click on one of my listings that's promoted, and then you go, you don't buy that, but you say, hey, what else does Julie have in her store? And you buy something else, I'm getting charged a promoted fee, correct?
So right now, um,
Yes.
think this is where I've mentioned earlier that the two headed models that we have for general, we have direct attribution, which is very straightforward and has been there for quite a long time, is you have a shopper clicking on one of your promoted listing general item and purchases that same exact item within the next 30 days. That's a direct attribution. You get charged the ad rate at the time of click. Then comes halo attribution to what you mentioned. You have a shopper clicking on item A, which is promoted by general, and then that same buyer or shopper ends up purchasing your item B, the same shopper, and as long as it is sold by you, if this happens within the 30 days of the click, then and the additional condition is the sold item has to be promoted at the time of sale. When all of these are check, check, and check, is when that ends up in an attribution in the ad fee. In that case, you will be charged ad fee at the time of sale. Now, you can see how you have to keep notes of these two strategies is where our upcoming update will simplify, at least from that perspective.
Right. So when the changes occur, if you click on, let's say I have some stuff promoted, some stuff not promoted. You click on my Nikes, they're promoted. And then you say, does she have anything else? And you buy the jacket that is not promoted. I'm not getting charged a promoted fee on the jacket.
You won't get charged. So anything that is not promoted gets sold, no ad fee attribution from general perspective.
But what if that jacket is promoted, but you click on the Nike, but then you look at see seller's other items. So you're not clicking on a promoted listing, you're just visiting my store. Am I paying a fee on the jacket after January 13th?
So if the jacket is promoted and it gets sold, you won't be charged an ad fee for this sale if the shopper has only clicked on another promoted item. But
Okay.
if there has been a promoted click on this jacket within the previous 30 days, though this shopper hasn't done that in this current session, but there is a click and you're in the 30-day window, then that sale can get attributed and charged.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Um, why is eBay making this change now? Kye, got any answers?
Yeah, and that's the most common question that we're hearing from sellers in the community, right? Why are we moving to this new attribution model? And beyond what Rishi has walked through in terms of like simplification and more control, meaning if it's not advertised, you won't be charged an ad fee, right? The additional sort of unpacking there is um, in the current model and not in the new model that we're moving to, if you received a click and the attribution window, the 30-day attribution window is triggered, there's still this 30-day lag of potentially that sale going through and you being charged an ad fee. In the new approach, new attribution model, if you end your promoted listing, you stop ad fees from being charged. So you sort of get that lever of control, right? But back to your question, which is why are we doing this? We need to sort of take a step back and set a little bit of context in terms of our promoted general promoted listings general product, right? And this is a cost per sale model. And this model is very, very unique to eBay, meaning no other major e-commerce platforms offers a only pay fees, ad fees when you sell, right? Most are either you're buying individual ways of promotion or you're paying per click, right? In terms of a cost per click model. And so, in other words, sellers are getting a more risk-free or advertised risk-free model with our promoted listings general product. So that's sort of just the context that meaning we're talking about a unique product offering within the marketplace that only eBay has. And so with that in mind, this update now more accurately reflects the value that general ads are delivering to sellers, meaning your ad shows up higher in search. Your ad shows up in recommendations on view item pages. Your ad shows up in Google, and you're getting that visibility, getting those interactions, right, for free today, right? And so this is essentially value that sellers are getting risk-free and free of fees. And so by moving to this new attribution model, we are actually balancing or more reflecting that value that sellers are getting. And again, sellers only pay an ad fee when their item sells. So that value proposition of only pay when you sell still exists with the new attribution logic, right? And so the other piece that Rishi mentioned is first slot exclusivity with PLP, right? And this provides extra incentive for sellers who want to drive greater sales velocity, who want to sort of win more premium ad placement at the top of search, right? And drive more sales, drive faster sales, essentially speed up their sales for their business. This creates more value for them, for those sellers that want to use our CPC model or our promoted listings priority strategy, right? So now when you put those two together, you essentially have a two strategy ads model that sellers get to basically say, well, do I want to pay per sale or do I want to pay per click? And that's a choice that we think is meaningful and valuable for sellers.
Okay, your answer made two more questions in my head. Okay, so the top slot is the pay per click. What if you and I are both selling the same thing and we're doing pay per click? Who gets the top slot?
So this goes back to some of the components that Rishi mentioned, right? So there's a lot of factors that go into what ad serves to which buyer and when and where, right? So when we talk about the first ad slots, like now when we first let's take a step back and say, what does exclusivity mean, right? That means that only a PLP ad can show, and if no PLP ad can show, we will show a organic or non-promoted listing. So that first ad slot can no longer show a promoted listings general ad,
Okay.
right? So I think that let's just make sure that that's sort of
Okay.
put out there. That's what first slot exclusivity means. Now, if you, Julie, and me, we're selling the sort of the same card, right? Ultimately, if you keep all things equal, meaning we have the same photos, we have the same description, we have the same title, and everything is held equal, the determining factor there is based on sort of the behavior logic that Rishi mentioned, as well as the maximum CPC. How much more am I willing to pay for a click, right? From Rishi, let's say Rishi is the buyer, the shopper. How much more am I willing to pay for that click from Rishi than you are, Julie? And maybe you want to pay more for the click. So you say, hey, I'm willing to pay $1 for that click. And Kye, I'm only willing to pay 50 cents. You, in theory, in that model would show in the first slot, right? So the goal here is to balance how much does a seller value an interaction from Rishi or a purchase from Rishi, and how relevant is that listing ultimately to Rishi or other buyers. So there's a balancing act that is struck, and this is where our algorithms and our AI models come into play in terms of showing the most relevant listings, the ones that we believe will perform best, right? Balanced with the need for sellers to advertise or get their product more visibility.
Now, say you're willing to pay. I'm gonna go crazy in this example. Let's say you're willing to pay $10 for a click, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna win it. Obviously, higher you pay, higher your chances. But to Kye's point, everything is same. Your listing details, title, attributes, everything is same. But then also comes the other set of factors, which is relevance, right? You may not have the right keywords, then somehow you just still don't show up because seller or the buyer search for something, you won't show up because of your keywords not matching, or your performance history has not been that great, so you're getting started, and as and when you continue to deliver good listings, good quality listings, and all the other factors is when that winning algorithm will start favoring. So a lot of things are going in background. It's not just advertising that gets you right up there.
Now, when we're talking about the top slot, that is in when the search drop down is relevance, right? What if I search for lowest price or newly listed or closest to me? Does that change any of this? Is this just best match or
No,
how does
it
that fin
So if there are no filters, this is all that comes into play.
right?
And then, of course, as the shoppers start filtering things out, those things obviously will come into picture. And from the pool that we found, that will take out something that doesn't match the filter the shopper is applying.
So if Kai and I are selling the same card and mine's $10 cheaper and he's promoted it and I haven't, but we have the only two and a buyer goes in and they filter lowest price, they're going to see mine first anyway, right?
Lowest
Correct.
prices, yes, if your selling price is lower and if that's the
Okay.
filter.
And just because something is in that first slot doesn't necessarily mean it's going to sell, right? Unless the being high up in search matters, but it's not the only thing that matters, right? I mean, there's other factors. People look at the
Right.
shipping, people look at all the other things, right?
Yeah. So like we said, it's important to note that promoting doesn't guarantee an item will sell or sell faster, right? Your item should have priced competitively, like we said, three or more high quality images, all the keywords, like when I say keywords, not just the cost per click advertising keywords, but keywords like in your description, in your attributes within the item details. Those need to be more relevant and bunch of other factors within the item description as well.
And um, Kai, you mentioned something that let's say I'm promoting that card and I notice I've got 100 watchers on the card. And obviously, starting in January, I'm promoting that card. The first person who watched it, all of a sudden, that promoted fee follows that. If I end the promotion, let's say something has like, am I still paying the ad fee?
No, you will not pay the ad
Okay.
fee. So the moment you end your promotion, you will not pay the ad fee.
Even if one of them bought it?
That's
Yeah.
correct. Because the item, Rishi covered this when he was talking about the change. There's sort of two requirements that are needed in order for an ad fee to be charged, which is the item needs to be promoted at the time of click, so the ad click, and
Right.
then the item needs to be promoted at the time of sale when it sells, right? And so if let's say, for example, you accrued 100 watchers, and then come January 14th, you end promotion for that item with 100 watchers, and then on January 15th, let's say, that item sells, you would not pay an ad fee.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. So we're changing January 13th. So what can we as sellers do right now if I guess you really just answered that. So if I'm promoting everything today and then I say I am not doing this anymore, which I'm not saying that, but let's say I am. Um, if I stop on January 12th, I'm not paying any promoted listings fees, even if those items sell, correct? What else can we do? What else do we need to know about that January deadline?
Yeah, and so one of the reasons why we wanted to announce this early, right, is so that sellers can essentially get familiar with the changes, both changes, which is what does this mean for my business, and how can I sort of establish a baseline understanding of my performance and my ad fees so that when January 13th comes along and that sort of that switch flips, how do I measure my performance against what I was getting beforehand, right? And so one of the things that we are recommending for sellers is to continue to use the tools and continue to promote, obviously, because we're heading into peak season right now, right? With the holidays, et cetera, and the new year. But keep a close eye and start to identify those higher and lower margin products. And higher margin meaning here are the items where maybe the ad fees or ad rates don't impact my ROAS for those particular items as much as the lower margin ones, right? So if you're already on the edge on particular items that you've listed, maybe these are the ones that I need to lower my ad rate. Or to your point, Julie, consider not promoting starting January 13th, right? And then take a look at your single and multi-quantity listings, right? These are also items in terms of understanding the buckets of your types of items that you're promoting or you're selling, meaning the multi-quantity listings are likely the ones that are driving a significant amount of volume and amount of sales. So these are the ones that come January 2nd, or sorry, January 13th, will be the ones that you want to focus on the most in terms of, okay, what's my before and after look like, right? And so we see a lot of sellers thinking about more of a wait and see, meaning don't turn it off immediately on Jan 13th because you don't yet understand the full impact of the attribution change and also first slot exclusivity on your selling velocity and your bottom line. So wait to see how it plays out. And then with that baseline understanding that you've been establishing through the holidays, et cetera, what actions do I need to take? Do I need to lower my ad rates? Do I need to potentially turn off promoted listings for some of the tighter margin items? Some items you may actually look to increase your ad rate on because as, let's say, sellers turn off their promoted listings, competition in terms of where your ads can show, maybe you will find that you can find pockets and opportunities to actually boost your listing into higher positions and drive more visibility, drive more conversions, and ultimately better sales.
Well, you mentioned there's someplace that we can see is there someplace like if I'm selling the Nike shoes and I want to see what other people, where do I see that on eBay where I see like how many are promoted or what the average promotion rate is? Is there a place on Seller Hub or something?
So if you're talking about sort of the competition proof point, that
Yeah,
is actually is shown within multiple entry points for when you promote. So when you get to the promoted listing screen on the in the app or on web, you will start to see, you should see at least on mobile, right? There's a little box that says something like 43% of sellers are promoting, right? Within this category, let's say it's toys, like hobby
right.
trading cards, etc., right? And so you'll get a sense of competition. Some selling categories will be much more competitive than others, and that'll give you a sense of, okay, should I be promoting? There's sort of two ways to look at it. Are there a lot of folks promoting, in which case, geez, I need to improve my listing quality and I also need to promote at the same time to sort of rise to the surface? Or if it isn't, if there aren't a lot of people promoting, right? By promoting, I am now able to boost my listing above those other sellers. So there's multiple ways of looking at it. My best advice for sellers, especially those starting off with ads, is start to get baseline, start to get benchmarks of how certain listings perform. And that's ultimately what I did. I know what types of cards perform better with a 2.2% versus cards that are going to perform better with an 8% ad rate, right? And that's just how you look at your data, how you start to segment your types of listings, and ultimately your selling category. So better understanding which sellers are participating, right? How fast and how what margins you're working with for particular items, and that'll give you a better sense of how aggressive you need to be with your strategy.
And I guess that was one of my questions. If sellers that have limited budgets, that's the best way for them to test promoted listings without overspending? Like Rishi, like
Yeah,
if somebody hasn't
I
ever,
would.
like small sellers, like what's the best, what does eBay recommend?
Right. So for new advertisers, a great place to start with is, like we said, find your competitive listings, things where you think there'll be a lot of competition to stand above the crowd. So for example, I sell running shoes. I'll stick with that example since we started with that. And it's a pretty crowded category. So to stand out, I need to increase my chances of making a sale. That's where, and then on top of it, if I'm a new advertiser, I would recommend general strategy campaign because it's low risk. You don't pay unless your item sells, and hence there's guaranteed profit at some in
Okay.
more or less margin, right? So it's a low risk. You only pay when your item sells. Now, if you are an experienced advertiser, and if you want to try out the other side of the world, so if you have an item, say, which is obviously highly competitive, but at the same time, it is either multi-quantity listing, like we just said, or high margin. So in Kye's experience, trading card. So I bought it for $10. I'm selling it for $100. So there's a definitely big margin that I have. It gives me more room to experiment. And for those, priority strategy makes the best bet, right? Either multi-quantity or high margin. So that's the kind of a high level suggestion that we have on the two sides of promoted listings. But either way, promoted listings does help you boost visibility, right? So your items appear higher in the results, get in front of the buyers. So I guess for new ones, new advertisers, start small, track what works, and then build your strategy from there.
Thank you. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And that leads me to my next question because I am, I guess, a lazy promoted listings user because I just promote everything in my eBay stores at 2.1%. And why not two? I don't, somebody who was a top seller at eBay Open before the pandemic told me back then you could promote at 1%. He goes, everything at 1.1%, give it that little. So I've always given that little. And I'd say maybe 40% of my stuff sells through the promoted listings and it's just 2%. And I don't miss the 2%, right? But is that doing anything? Or do I need to be more focused like the jackets I just listed, I don't need to promote, but the Nike, like, does promoting at the minimum actually do anything? Kai?
Yes, it does. So, I mean, that's the short answer, right? But we have to think about this, I think, on in two ways, which is when you promote, you compete better than those sellers and against those items that are not promoted, right? But when you promote, you're also competing against other sellers who promote, right? And so when you think about, well, why am I using 2.1? And for me, it's 2.2, right? Because there is this sort of common approach of, well, if I just go a little bit, if all things equal, we're selling the same item for a competitive price, right? In the market price or market value for an item. If I just sort of if I'm willing to just pay a little bit more, I can sort of get that extra bump above the next seller, right? Next to me, right? And so generally speaking, that's how you are competing. You're competing against those non-promoted organic listings, which yes, you will benefit from that just by promotion. Remember that the top four slots in search results are dedicated to promoted listings, right? Where relevant, right? Again, there are going to be queries and there are going to be certain things where we're going to just show organic because those are the most relevant results. But when you do promote, you're eligible to show in the top four ad slots. With come January 13th, PL our promoted listings priority strategy, that top one slot is only for those particular promoted listings, right? So yes, short answer is 2% does help, but the more you're willing to increase your ad rate, so as we think about, right, the suggested ad rate, this is allowing you to be as competitive as possible, drive maximum visibility and maximum sales velocity while attempting to minimize the cost. Yes, you will pay more because let's say you're setting it at 12% versus 3%, right? But you are also indicating and signaling that I want to show up higher for this listing. I'm willing to pay that much more in ad fees in order to show up higher and to show up more frequently across eBay, right? So there's sort of different ways of looking at this, but when you think about like apples to apples comparing one seller who's promoting versus another seller who's promoting the same item, sometimes the sort of the tiebreaker is going to be how much you're willing to pay, right? In terms of the competition. Again, we're talking about all things equal,
Right.
same listing, same images, etc. Right? There's a lot of factors, but if we sort of even those out, that's where you're going to see the difference maker, if you will.
And taking these learnings further to your, I think maybe you asked earlier, but to your other part of the question, right, where should I be promoting at minimums? I think this is what clarifies it, right? But taking these learnings into whether should I promote everything or just certain few, right? So that depends on your strategy. We've seen sellers who are trying to accomplish the goal of I want to declutter everything in my inventory for various reasons. Promote everything makes total sense in that case. You keep selling faster, of course, depending on all the other factors as we mentioned. And then there are sellers who don't care how fast my item sells. I just want to make some profit out of X, Y, and Z product. Let me promote that. So that'll be the picking and choosing behavior, right? But for the large sellers or the businesses, um, promoted listings will be found to be an indispensable tool. There is definitely huge growth opportunities for the business if you promote smartly with all these learnings, applying the correct strategy or the correct ad type to our various listings or store.
Okay, but with the new promoted listings that start in January, the new so let's say I look at Kye's card and I don't buy it, and then that is now my click is attached to it. So if he sells it to anyone else, whether he sent the link directly to you, Rishi, or he showed it on his Instagram page, he's going to pay the promoted listing fees. So how can I tell if my campaign is actually working or not? Is there going to be a way for me to see like how many people looked at the promoted listing versus organically? Like how am I going to know that maybe my competition clicked on all my listings and then people are finding them another way? Like how am I going to be able to tell that they're working or not?
So this is where the performance measurement comes into picture, right? If you're a seller familiar with Seller Hub on your desktop, or similarly the ads destination on mobile, there are metrics that we provide which will help you keep track of what is being helped with the advertising in what level, right? So starting at the top, there is metric called impressions. What that tells you is my listing appearing more, how often, at various ad placements that we just talked about, right? Now that I'm promoting. Second is clicks. Out of those visible results, basically the shoppers who have seen my ad, how many of those are actually going ahead and clicking into it. So that tells you about the relevance and competitiveness that you have in your items, which drives engagement and interest from the sellers. Now, then going further down, from the sellers who clicked, how many are actually purchasing it or basically eventually converting it, right? So for that, we have a few metrics. One is sold quantity. So that'll tell you out of the 1,000 impressions, I got 200 clicks. I'm just taking random examples. 1,000 impressions, I got 200 clicks. From these 200 clicks, I got eventually 30 sales, right? For example. So those will be the 30 sold quantity. And then there is a metric called sales, which tells you how much of the um, total amount was sold and that got attributed to these 30 sales, right? And then finally, like these are your base metrics. And finally, to understand the actual performance, you will look at the metrics called ACOS or ROAS. They're basically opposite of each other. ROAS basically tells you how much of my attributed sale is based on the ad fee or the cost that I'm paying, right? So it's basically attributed sales divided by your ad fee. And then ACoS is just another one. For sellers who are not familiar, ROAS is revenue over ad spend. And then on the other hand, ACoS is average cost of sale. So if you think about it, that's basically how much am I paying per sale as a percentage. So these are the various metrics. You can see them as holistically at the account level. You can dive into each campaign will have these metrics within the campaign. Each listing will have these metrics, so you can even understand how each listing is performing. And if you are doing a cost per click campaign or priority campaign, you can also find these at your keyword level, how each single keyword that you have in your campaign performing. So I guess I don't know if that clarifies your question.
And it does, and all of that is in Seller Hub,
That is all in
correct?
Seller Hub, yes, in
Okay.
the advertising tab.
And can you see that on the app or is that only on desktop?
So app has something called native ads destination. It has a similar metrics. It just doesn't show up exactly one-to-one mapping as how you see on desktop, but you will
Right.
find all these details in the account level, listing,
Okay.
campaign, all the different. You
Okay.
can even break down by the strategy or the ad type for any of these metrics.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I need to start diving into that a little bit. Kye, one of the top questions that I get on my TikTok account is eBay stores. Do I need one? Or what do they mean? Do eBay stores tie into promoted listings at all? Do sellers with stores get any extra benefits or visibility? If you upgrade your store, does that change anything? Could you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I actually have a store subscription, so I can tell you my personal experience, but also at sort of the short answer is if you have a store subscription, it doesn't give you sort of any advantages in terms of promoted listings, right? So if you have a store, you don't have a store subscription, if you promote your listings, you're on the same playing field essentially, right? Um, However, with a store subscription, you do get a lot of other benefits, right? Which is something like lower value fees is one of the biggest ones, which is if you sell enough, you have enough sales velocity, you're making enough sales, that essentially pays for your store subscription on its own, right? And not only that, but what we've seen because of the added extra benefits you get with your store subscription, like a banner, you can add certain items so that when a buyer goes to your store, they're sort of met with a nice spread of listings within your store or your inventory. We do see that store subscribers benefit from those interactions as well. In fact, I think the stat is 60% more sales, or no, 60% more traffic and 15% more sales on average for those that are using a store with promoted stores. So when you have a store subscription, you can then use our promoted stores product, which Rishi talked about at the top of the conversation. And by using both of those, right, you can actually see not only a significant increase in traffic to your store, but also higher store velocity, meaning more sales, right? And then separately, and this is from my own experience having a store subscription, which is I oftentimes encounter buyers who find whatever the card that they're looking for, and then they'll go into my store and purchase like two, three, sometimes four other items. And essentially what a store subscription allows you to do, and because of the page that you're able to manage and control and curate, is it allows you to upsell and cross sell your other items in a very, very sort of organized way or curated way. Because if you just go to sellers' other listings and you don't have a store subscription, you're just sort of rummaging through, let's say
Right.
your store has 500, 1,000 listings. It's sort of, do I happenstance wander upon an item that I'm also interested in? A storage subscription allows you to organize that into categories, into specific buckets of listings. So if I'm a buyer, I could say, oh, what else does Kye have in terms of Pokemon cards versus Magic the Gathering cards? and very quickly identify the items that I might be interested in purchasing within my shopping cart, if you will.
So if I drive traffic to my own store and all those, let's say I promote everything, and even after January, I'm promoting everything, but I stick a business card in my packages or I put on my Instagram, visit my store, and buyers just buy directly from my store. Those are organic, right? Those would not be ads, correct? As long as somebody hadn't clicked on them before, if I'm driving traffic to those items and no one has clicked on them, so there's no ad attached to it yet. I guess I don't know what you're
Are
calling
you
that.
asking are you asking from a promoted stores perspective?
No, just from a regular store.
Okay, so your scenario is somebody clicks on an item in your store, goes to its view item page, and then purchases it. That's
Mhm.
basically it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So if that's all, then we don't expect that to lead to any ad fee unless you're also promoting that item in a general strategy campaign. Then you pay for the sale with all the one, two, and three conditions matching.
Okay.
But speaking from a promoted stores perspective, say you're not advertising it through general, you get a click on your promoted stores, which, like we said, builds your whole brand visibility. So somebody visits your entire store. Now the shopper is browsing, finds some other couple of items that they're interested in, and then go ahead and purchase those. That's not giving you any additional ad fee. You just got charged for the click because it's a every other ad type except the general strategy is cost per click. So priority campaign, promoted offsite, promoted stores, they're all cost per clicks. So
Right.
you got charged for the click. Now whatever happens is your free benefit now that you got the visibility through those.
That makes sense. Thank you. If we click on our own listing, somebody asked me this today. So after January, the second, so if I click on my own promoted listing and I'm the first click and then you buy it, does that count as a click?
That has been brought up internally to make
Okay.
sure it doesn't drive, but we will definitely make
Okay.
sure of that not affecting you. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
the intention there is that you would not be charged an ad fee in that particular behavior or scenario, right? Yeah.
And a lot of sellers search for comparable items on eBay, and I know that you've been asked this lately too. Um, I I was looking today, the jacket that I'm selling. I always look at comps, solds, and then I look at eBay product research. I couldn't find the jackets I was selling. And so then, of course, I'm going to look at current listings, see is anyone selling it and how much they're selling it for. No one was selling it. But if they were, and I clicked on their listing to see, oh, is it the same one? What condition it's in? I have absolutely no intention of buying that item. But if I'm clicking on their promoted listing, that counts as an ad click, correct? So is eBay trying to find a way to weed those out, or that's just the way it is, I guess is the question.
So those kind of clicks, curiosity clicks into the listing, they count as click. Now, if it's a promoted listing, then that's an ad click. So that exists today for both general and priority. It's going to continue with the same behavior even beyond this change. So this change is not affecting any of that model where a click is a click. Now, where we might want to throw light on is you basically clicked on somebody else's ad or listing just for curiosity. You didn't have any bad intention, malicious intentions. But there will be, we have been asked this and hence we're clarifying, there will be certain folks who might want to just, see an uptick into the fees of the competition, or they set up bots or they set up some kind of AI agents. We have internally a very solid fraud detection system, click fraud detection system, to make sure we churn out any and every invalid click, any and every malicious or bot click to make sure you're charged or you're considered only based off of the clicks that are genuine clicks per se. So yeah.
That's very helpful.
And
Thank you.
and to build off of what Rishi just mentioned, we are also looking internally at that data. So this question has popped up a lot, right? And I think it's a very valid concern and valid topic for discussion. What we want to do is take a look at the data as well, which is to see the sort of curiosity clicks. I'm doing research and I click on it and it's considered an ad click. How often or how frequently is that the only click that is on the listing versus you have curiosity clicks blended with actually intentful clicks as well that ultimately lead to purchases? We want to make sure that we are hearing the feedback, hearing the concern, and ultimately better understanding, well, how prevalent, right? Is this widespread? Are we only talking about edge cases where it's almost non-existent? We want to better understand this with the community. So we are taking that feedback very seriously and we are bringing it back to our teams to make sure that we fully understand exactly what that behavior looks like, because you're right, that is something that sellers do think about, and we want to make sure that we have a very transparent and very sort of data driven answer for you guys.
Are are there items like, so my Nike sneakers, that there's 200 pairs. If I decide I'm not promoting them at all, is there ever instances where they're just buyers are just never going to see them, that they're hidden?
Uh,
Like, does eBay hide listings that are not promoted?
No, so it all ties back to the same set of the combo that we mentioned earlier, right? If you have good quality listings, you have every other aspect good, I don't think there is any reason for any system to hide anything. Um, there are cases where certain um, bad actors are detected, like, in this case, fraudulent clicks and all that. So in that case, we do take them seriously. We consider that as a fraud behavior, and then there will be some impacts on that. But for folks like you and me, all the good intentioned people, there is no specific hiding of any sort. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would never consider it the term to be hiding, right? So when we think about the search results page as real estate or showing buyers the most relevant listings, as time passes and as data accumulates across what is actually being interacted with, what is actually being transacted with, meaning, you know, bought slash sold, right? What are the most relevant listings to show to a buyer? This matters in terms of how the algorithm reacts. And so if you have, to Rishi's point, a very bad listing, you have a single, blurry image, and you don't have keywords, you have a very poor description, no attributes. eBay might serve that listing when you first listed it, right? But then if it's not relevant or deemed to be relevant, then yes, we wouldn't in theory show that listing anymore, right? Because the whole goal is to match the best listing, the best item with the relevant buyer to ensure that we're making that connection and making that sale. So it's sort of like it's not about hiding per se, but we have to also understand the algorithms involved in terms of trying to drive relevancy for our buyers.
To understand it simply, think of it as not winning the slots versus
That's right.
based
Yeah,
on one or more factors versus hiding, because it's a completely different perspective in that case. So.
that's right. Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
Rishi. That's the
Okay.
TLDR.
So if we're not promoting and our items are stale, or we have what I like to call it like crappy listings, we have listings that aren't getting any views, we're not promoting them. They're maybe don't have good photos, they don't have good keywords. That's why no one's seeing them,
Most
right?
likely,
And so
most likely.
mostly. So if promoted listings are absolutely optional, correct? So if sellers choose to not promote at all in order to keep sales coming in, like what are your top three tips like to keep sales coming in? I know what mine are, but I would like to hear from you guys. Like what if we're not going to promote because some people just don't want to promote for whatever reason, and they're optional, what can they do to to keep selling, I guess.
think I would say without promoting your top three things, I mean, I personally as a seller would look at, and probably everyone has different opinions. Most likely it should match, which is I would look at it as improving the words or the description that I have. Even if you're not promoting through priority or promoted offsite or promoted stores, the words still matter. It's a keyword in an advertising world, but it's still a word that is key to your listing, right? So keyword in a way. You would want to keep them really relevant to what you think the shoppers will be searching for, or the words that will match your listing to show up connected to another listing when you browse down, right? In recommendations sometimes. Secondly, images definitely helps. Personally, I as a shopper, if I find not just eBay, any platform, if I find something with not so clear images, I kind of lose trust in that listing and move on. So definitely the image quality matters. And then thirdly, I would try and keep the title most relevant. Title is also something that you see before you even dive into the details for a shopper to be intrigued about it.
And I'll give two bonus
Okay.
best practices on top of Rishi's, which is make sure that you're doing the right research in terms of how much your item is worth, right? You know what we at the end of the day, as a buyer, right, you want to find the most affordable version of what you're looking for. And so if you're 50% above market or twice as expensive, can you reasonably expect a buyer to purchase your item? Maybe if you have a one of a kind, yes, right? You get to dictate the market value for that. But if you sort of have, if there's 100 other listings and they're all priced at $15 and yours is priced at 25, there's a divide there that no optimization is ever necessarily going to fix. And so I always recommend make sure that you're checking. If something's not selling, are you going back and saying, is this still worth what I thought it was worth? Especially in the collectibles space, prices ebb and flow with demand and supply and demand, right? And then the other one is, are you building up sort of a reputable seller experience? Meaning, are your shipping costs reasonable? Are you delivering your items on time, right? How quick is your fulfillment process? That's super important. How many reviews do you have? Do you have five, or do you have 500, or maybe 5,000, right? Are they positive? Are they negative? Um, these are all signals that other buyers sort of feed off of, which is if you only have five reviews, I might not buy from you versus another seller with the same item, same price at 500 positive reviews, right? So as a seller, build that sort of momentum, build that head of steam by being a great seller, doing all the things that Rishi mentioned. And it takes time, right, to build up your reviews. I remember when I first started out, I was like, let me just get to 100. Let me get the star to change colors, right? Then I set a milestone. I need to get to 500. And this year I needed to get to 1,000. I hit 1,000 before the end of the year. So I met my goal for the year, right? But again, these things play off of each other. All of these things interact with each other. So it's never just like one thing or or ads being a silver bullet. We need to think about selling on eBay holistically, right? Are we providing the best, most relevant items and listings to potential buyers from a seller's perspective, right? And are we using all the tools at hand to make sure that we're optimizing our listings for that?
That's really helpful. I appreciate all of that. Okay. So I've kept you guys long enough, and I don't like to end things on a negative, um, but the reselling community is not happy with this pay, with the change to promoted listing standard. They're upset that a lot of them are upset about the fact that I could click on it and not buy it. You could click on it organically, and I'm paying the ad, and the ad fees charged. And if they are upset and they want to let eBay know their feelings, don't complain to me. I don't work for eBay. Who can they, who do we call? Who do we email? How does eBay want to hear our feedback?
Yeah, so there's multiple direct channels, right? So you can go into eBay and take a survey, leave your feedback. There's links all over different points of contact inside of eBay desktop and also in the app, right? So that's sort of like the bread and butter approach to leaving feedback. Now, admittedly, that gets sent into a long list of feedback, right? And so when we think about sellers that really want to engage in productive, constructive, and valuable conversations, we recommend a lot of the community threads, right? eBay's selling Instagram, right? Seller circles, right? Those are sort of the local meetups where local sellers get together and they talk. Now, we have representation across all three of those fronts, meaning eBay employees as well as our community teams are always on the community boards. They're helping out sellers, they're listening to sellers, they share that feedback, both quantitative and qualitative to our teams, both marketing, product Rishi's team, engineering, our sales team, etc. Right. So we do funnel that feedback to the proper teams. But these are the best ways to ultimately reach out, share ideas, engage in discourse, not only with eBay, but also with the rest of the seller community. What we actually see is, within subreddits as well and social media, we see great discourse happening within sellers. And as you as sellers all start to talk about one thing, that eventually bubbles and rises up to the surface. And so we hear it all. Not only that, right, and this is the reason why Rishi and myself are here talking to you, Julie, is that we are listening, we do care, right? And so we want to show up and make sure that we're hearing the feedback, understanding the sentiment for both positive and for more, challenging launches and announcements that we make, right? Our goal is to help sellers navigate selling on eBay, right? And provide them with the right tools and the right resources to be successful. So all of those channels are appropriate. We're here, we're listening. Obviously, Julie, you have our direct line. So if you're hearing stuff from sellers, you can send it to my inbox, but please be kind. But
I'm always kind.
these are all ways that we can continue to keep sort of open dialogue and making sure that we're understanding the opportunities and some of the pain points that sellers are going through.
And to build on that, as Kye said, we are listening to and looking at all these feedback, regardless of the channel it comes from, whether you fill the survey app, you go on community, you talk to other sellers on a seller circle or any of those forums. We definitely look at it. It comes to us directly or indirectly. The ultimate goal is definitely to have this mutually beneficial platform where, feedback helps us help improve the product for you and keep things going on both ends. So yes, what I'm trying to eventually say is the feedback definitely helps build or holds definitely a high weightage into how we shape our roadmap, our product building exercise as we move on.
And I'll add to that is that our leadership team from the very top is asking for the feedback, asking for the sentiment, right? I'm tasked personally within eBay to collect all of that and make sure that I'm representing the voice of the seller to our leadership team. And so it very much matters and it very much is being listened to and being acted on. So to all the sellers that are like, eBay doesn't listen, they're not, they don't care about us. We do very deeply. And I can tell you that internally within the walls of eBay that there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of chatter, and a lot of resources being poured into understanding just how our sellers feel and what their feedback is.
I appreciate that. I've never thought that eBay doesn't listen, and I've been an eBay seller since 2000. And you know, there's things that eBay does that maybe I don't always agree with, but I never feel like they're just deaf ears. And I understand when you run a business, you have to make decisions. But I really, really, really appreciate both of you spending time with me today. I know I was only supposed to have you for an hour. I got you for over an hour. So I hope that didn't ruin your schedule
It
today.
was fun now.
Okay, no, and I
These are the
really,
conversations that help us, learn more, express what is really required anyways, because we heard on many other channels about education, and your platform, Julie, is one of the best ways we could educate somebody who's getting started or has some misconceptions.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as I have eBay businesses and I need to decide what I want to do for my business, and I know that other sellers, instead of just being upset, need to focus on what they're going to do in January or even now. And so I appreciate that you guys really came and really explained it. And I have a lot of new knowledge, and I need to maybe change my lazy 2.1 across the board. Maybe I need to go to 2.2. I don't know. I need to probably really dive into those numbers a little more. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you
Thank you,
again.
Julie, for the
Thanks.
opportunity. Really
Thanks.
appreciate it. Take
Thank you.
care.